with Mr. Chesnut and Mr. DeGuerin, all people's counsel are here. Our witness is Giordano, is presumed the witness stand. You're under oath. You may continue.
Thank you. Ma'am, the following questions that I'm going to ask you, I'm not asking about a specific time. So I just want to know, the answer to this is, has Mr. Durst ever said this stuff to you? And I don't care about the timing. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. Has he ever expressed concern to you that Nick Chavin might bury him with evidence in this case?
No.
Has he ever expressed to you any concern that Nick Chavin has incriminating evidence that might impact him in this case?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense wanted to know what Nick Chavin had said to me?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense was determined to find out what he was going to say in court?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that Bob's lawyers had told you that they wanted to know if Nick knew that Bob was being extorted by Susan?
No.
Do you have any knowledge of Bob Durst being extorted by Susan?
No.
Have you ever said to Nick that Bob is, quote, sick to death that Nick is going to say something to the prosecution that is very bad for him, unquote?
No.
Have you ever said anything similar like that to Nick Chavin at all?
No.
Meaning ever involving any concern that he's going to share information that he has that is damaging to Mr. Durst?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that he was the most pivotal, important witness in this case?
No.
And ma'am, are you aware of the questions that I just asked you? Have you been asked those before?
No.
Ma'am, do you recall that on February 15, 2017, page 81, line 27 to page 82, line 27, that I asked you the identical questions in court? You don't remember that?
No.
All right. Have you in any way ever discussed the case involving Susan Berman, Kathy Durst, or Morris Black with Nick Chavin?
The case itself, no.
Now I'm asking what you've discussed. What have you said to Nick? You said the case itself. What have you said to Nick regarding Bob Durst, Susan Berman, Morris Black, or Kathy Durst?
Your Honor, foundation, please, and time frame.
What?
Also cumulative as well.
Overruled.
Do you understand my question?
I do, and it's 25 years that I know Nick, 30 years, but I told him the last time we spoke that Nick said, actually Nick called me.
Ma'am, I'm not asking what Nick said to you. I'm asking, what did you say to Nick Chavin?
Well, that was response to Nick's question, but I said, well, then you should reach out to the defense. That's the only thing I said to him.
So, ma'am, have you ever had a conversation with Nick Chavin where you discussed the facts of Kathy Durst's disappearance?
No.
Have you ever had a conversation with Nick Chavin where you discussed the facts of Susan Berman's murder?
No.
Have you ever had a conversation with Nick Chavin where you discussed anything relating to Morris Black's death and dismemberment?
No.
So, ma'am, you're saying that when you were interested in dating Bob Durst back in 1987, that you never asked Nick Chavin, hey, Nick, so Bob's wife disappeared and never came back. You never brought that up to him?
No, because I thought, according to Nick, he made a joke out of it. So I thought she left him.
Well, ma'am, I assume you were aware that Kathy Durst was a couple of months away from graduating and becoming a doctor. Were you aware of that?
Much later.
So, ma'am, so at some point in time, did you become aware that Bob Durst's wife, who was about to become a doctor, disappeared off the face of the earth, never to be seen again?
Like I said, much later, yes.
And when, much later is when? When did you become aware of that?
When, like in 2000, I guess.
So, ma'am, through all of your conversations, correspondence, visits, you've never had a conversation with Bob Durst about his missing wife?
No. I mean, conversations like where they went on vacation, mostly good times he had with her, but nothing about her disappearance.
So you've never even inquired to ask him, hey, Bob, what do you think happened to Kathy?
Objection, Your Honor, 352, cumulative.
Overruled.
No.
Ma'am, as you're sitting here listening to your testimony, I just want to ask you, does that sound at all to you a little bit strange that the person that you have said is your best friend, that you want to get a love nest with, that you want to spend the rest of your life with, that you've never had one conversation about his missing wife, does that sound strange to you?
No.
Have you ever had a conversation with Mr. Durst about Susan Berman's murder?
No.
Now, you became aware in 2000 that Bob Durst was the prime suspect in Kathy's disappearance, correct?
No. It was after that. They were reopening the case, but I think it was after the Morris Black that he was.
So you didn't see any of the stories in November and December of 2000 that talked about Kathy Durst's case being reinvestigated?
That's correct.
But you did know about it, and you did know that Bob was the prime suspect during the Morris Black situation, correct?
Yes.
And you're saying that's now approximately 20 years that not one even conversation about what happened to Kathy with Bob?
That's right.
Okay. Susan Berman. When did you become aware that she'd been murdered?
I don't know. I don't know. It was sometime, I guess, during the whole Morris Black thing. I wasn't speaking to Nick much, otherwise I would have heard it from Nick. So,
Ma'am, isn't it true that you have repeatedly tried to influence Nick Chavin's cooperation and his testimony in this case?
oh no.
Did you, in fact, call him numerous times prior to his testimony in 2017 to tell him that he should talk to Bob's lawyers? It's a yes or a no question.
I'm going to say yes.
And did you ever, ma'am, did you ever make those inquiries at Bob Durst's direction?
No.
So how did you know anything then about what Nick Chavin might or might not know that you are asking him to call Bob's lawyers? Why?
Nick called me. Nick would try to contact me, and he told me that we need to help out our mutual friend, exact words, had nothing nice to say about the prosecution, and that he had to help out. We had to get together to help out our mutual friend. And I told Nick it was better that we don't speak,
Okay.
just that he should speak to the defense.
And you're aware, ma'am, are you aware that Nick Chavin came in and testified in his hearing in February of 2017, among other things, that Bob Durst confessed to the murder of Susan Berman? You're aware of that, correct?
I am aware of that.
All right. I want to ask you, did you ever tell Nick Chavin that Bob's lawyers were aware that he and Bob had seen each other in the year before Bob was arrested, and that they wanted to know what Nick and Bob had talked about?
No.
So, did you ever say to Nick that Bob's lawyers told you that they were aware that Bob and Nick had seen each other in the last year, and they wanted to know what you guys talked about? Did you ever say that to Nick?
No.
Now, you're now aware, ma'am, that there was a dinner that Nick Chavin has testified about where Bob Durst confessed to him, correct?
Yes.
But you're saying you never brought that up to Nick Chavin.
No, Nick Chavin called me
That's, ma'am,
from that dinner.
It's a yes or no question. Did you ever bring it up to Nick Chavin, yes or no?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense specifically wanted to know what he was going to say in court?
No.
And did you tell Nick Chavin that they want to know what you know about Bob and what you told or are going to tell this guy Lewin?
No.
And let me ask you, ma'am, the no's that you've been given, are those no's absolutely, I'm 100% certain that I never said that to Nick Chavin, or are those no's, you know what? No, I don't remember.
No, I know exactly what I told Nick.
So you're absolutely certain?
I told Nick to contact the defense. I don't know what they wanted to know.
That's not what I asked you. You have said no to a series of questions about what you said to Nick Chavin. So I'm asking you, ma'am, are you 100% certain that you did not make those statements that I asked you about to Nick Chavin?
The only statement was that wasn't those exact words. I said to them that they wanted to speak to him because whatever outing they had that night, that he should speak to the defense. I never asked, the lawyers never spoke to me.
Ma'am, listen to my question again.
Okay.
Ma'am, please listen to what I'm asking you.
Okay.
You answered no to a series of questions that I asked you about what you had allegedly said to Nick Chavin. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
So what I'm asking you now is, are you 100% certain when you say no that you did not say those things to Nick Chavin? Or is it a situation where you are saying, you know what, to the best of my memory, I can't recall telling Nick Chavin that? Which one would it be?
I'm going to say, because the last two, I don't recall the last two questions. But
Ma'am, I can go through. I asked you
Fine.
8 questions
okay.
and of what you allegedly said to Nick Chavin, and you said no. Do you want me to read each question? I can do that. Or are you able to say, overall, is it a situation when you say no to those questions that it is no, I absolutely did not say that to Bob Durst, or is it no, to the best of my memory, I didn't say that to Bob Durst?
352, he is quite relevance, Your Honor.
Exactly.
Vagueness, no foundation, cumulative.
It's compound, but I don't really want to hear all 8 questions. We can do that.
No, but they've already been asked and answered.
Okay.
It's a different-
Are you sure is a different question. So
Ma'am.
you may, okay, go ahead,
Ma'am,
proceed.
so listen, ma'am. I don't want to
Exact
ask,
words, that's my question.
I don't want to answer the question, ask the question a third time. I want to just make it clear. So all I'm asking you is, you gave no to those questions about what you said to Nick Chavin. So it's a very simple question. Are you saying, as I sit here, I'm absolutely certain that I did not tell Nick Chavin that? Or are you saying, you know what, to the best of my memory, I don't think I told Nick Chavin that, but I can't say for sure? Which would it be?
Can I ask a question? To clarify? Can I ask a question to clarify? Is those my exact words?
Ma'am, it did, okay, so let me say it
It
this
might be
way.
easier if you just go through
Sure.
the 8, it'll go faster.
Yeah.
Are you sure, are you sure, are you sure?
I think that's what we'll do.
Okay.
We'll do, Your Honor. So, ma'am, has Mr. Durst, did you tell Nick Chavin that Mr. Durst expressed concern to you that he might bury him with evidence in this case? You said no. So my question is,
No.
are you saying, and here's my question, not those exact words, but did you say something similar to Nick Chavin? And the answer would be, no, I absolutely did not say that, or no, I don't remember saying that, but I can't say for sure. Which would it be?
No.
All right? The second question, did you ever tell Mr. Chavin that Bob has expressed concern that he has incriminating evidence that might impact him in this case? Would that be an
No.
absolute, ma'am, let me finish. Would that be an absolute no? Or would that be a no to the best of my memory?
It's an absolute no.
Okay? The third question would be, did you ever say to Nick Chavin that the defense wanted to know what Nick Chavin had said to me?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense was determined to find out what he was going to say in court?
No,
Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that Bob's lawyers had told you that they wanted to know if Nick knew that Bob was being extorted by Susan?
no,
And those are all meaning no, absolutely, I'm 100% sure.
yes,
Did you ever say to Nick Chabin that Bob is, quote, sick to death, that he's going to say something to the prosecution that is very bad for him, unquote?
no,
Did you ever say to Nick Chabin anything similar at all involving any concern that Nick is going to share information that he has that is damaging to Mr. Durst?
no,
Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that he was the pivotal, most important witness in this case?
Is this before your interview with him?
Ma'am,
This is the problem, because it was two
Ma'am.
different conversations.
ma'am, listen to me. Ma'am,
I'm
be
gonna
clear.
say I don't recall.
Ma'am, so let me be clear. I'm not asking you when you said it. I'm asking you, did you ever say to Nick Chabin?
Yes,
So you did tell him that he was the most important witness in this case.
yes,
So when I asked you that question the first time, you said no, correct?
correct,
When you were asked this question on February 15, 2017, this identical question, you said no, correct?
correct. This is because timeline, that's why I'm gonna. yeah.
So, ma'am, was there something confusing about the following question? Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that he was the pivotal, most important witness in this case? Did you find that to be a confusing question?
Because of the timeline and recollection of a conversation, it's taken out of content for me, just, so I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
Because it was after.
Ma'am, is your certainty when you have said no, your 100% certainty, is that the same level of certainty you had when you originally testified today, twice, that those suitcases were empty?
Yes,
And now, ma'am, you've conceded that, in fact, you were wrong about the suitcases being empty, correct?
Argumentative, Your Honor. 352.
You've
yes.
Did you ever say to Nick Chabin that Bob's lawyers wanted to know what side Nick was on?
No,
Did you ever get any information, ma'am, from any source that Susan Berman was, quote, extorting Bob Durst?
no,
Did you ever ask Bob Durst anything about Susan Berman extorting him for money?
no,
So if Nick Chabin is testifying that you mentioned Susan Berman extorting Bob Durst for money, you have no knowledge of that.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you.
Sustained.
What was that?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. The question is, I'm not asking, the question is not whether it's true, it's whether, in fact, it was asked.
What?
Hold on.
It's also an argument, Your Honor.
Certainly not hearsay, and it's not argument.
Hold on.
No, your argument.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, may I go sidebar and explain the question?
Yes.
And Your Honor, could you read the question as it's phrased? I don't have it in front of me, so when I go to sidebar.
If Nick Chabin is testifying that you mentioned Susan Berman extorting Bob Durst for money, you have no knowledge of that.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Okay.
Thank you.
Objection is sustained. You may rephrase your question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes.
Nick Chavin has previously stated that you asked him if he was aware, Nick Chavin was aware that that Susan Berman was extorting Bob Durst. Did you ever say that to Nick Chavin?
No.
Were you ever aware that Susan Berman was extorting Bob Durst?
No.
Did you ever have a conversation with Bob Durst about that?
No.
Are you aware, ma'am, that there has been evidence in this case that Susan Berman had information about Bob Durst that was damaging and that Bob Durst was sending her money? Are you aware of that?
No.
You have no knowledge in the years that this case has gone on that there is an allegation that Susan Berman was killed because she had information about Kathy Durst, that she had helped Bob Durst with an alibi, and that she was getting money from Mr. Durst. This is the first time you ever heard of that today?
Heard of it together? Yes. It was separate. I didn't think the money had anything to do with that. Is that?
Well, ma'am, so,
I can't answer. It was.
so were you aware, ma'am, that there was evidence in this case that was being presented that Susan Berman had falsely helped Bob Durst manufacture an alibi?
Objection, Your Honor.
Again, there's no grounds, it's just objection.
I'm speaking. It's
Okay.
hard. I've got this constant thing bombarding me in the back. 352, Your Honor. It also assumes facts that have not been
Right.
presented. It's a theory.
That's not an objection, the last one. The other two are not.
Your Honor, can I ask you a favor?
Yeah.
Could you
No,
please
let's,
be the
going
one
back.
be the one to correct me?
No, let's go,
May I continue, Your Honor?
yes.
Ma'am. Ma'am, is it your position that even after watching the Jinx, the episodes that you saw, that you were unaware that the allegation that was made in the Jinx was that Susan Berman helped Bob manufacture an alibi and was murdered because of it? Is that your testimony? You were unaware of that until your discussion in court today?
No, I was aware of it after the Jinx.
Okay, ma'am, the Jinx ended on March 15th, 2015.
Well,
That was the day that Bob Durst, day after he was arrested. So you would agree that any conversations you were having with Nick Chavin about Bob Durst's case, arrest, etc., had to have taken place after that date, right?
yes.
So my question to you is, ma'am, so how is it that you just testified a moment ago that you did not know that there was an allegation that Susan Berman had been extorting Bob Durst?
I didn't know anything about the extorting.
Well,
I-
ma'am,
I don't.
so here's my question. Were you aware that the allegation in the Jinx, you read articles in this case, correct?
Very few, very, very few.
You watched Datelines at Mr. Durst's request in 48 hours and sent articles, correct?
Dateline.
Ma'am,
I'm
Ma'am?
telling you, I don't, you can see the letters I wrote him, I don't normally read the newspapers, and I don't, unless he had told me.
ma'am,
I'm
do
sorry.
you want me to pull up clips of conversations where you and
Objection,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Durst talk about,
352.
The one,
Sustained, just
Ma-
do it or don't.
ma'am,
Make a decision.
ma'am,
yes, yes.
have you had conversations with Mr. Durst while he's been in custody where you talk about articles involving this case?
Yes.
So ma'am, so my question is, are you telling this jury that you were unaware until today that there was an allegation that Susan Berman was extorting or blackmailing Bob Durst?
Asked and answered, cumulative, 352.
Over.
Yes, I'm telling you, I didn't know anything about extortion. I didn't, it was, I read that he had given her a gift once, I think. I don't even know, I don't.
Ma'am, so you would agree that the Jinx presented, in the miniseries that you saw, that the Jinx presented information that Bob Durst was in essence being blackmailed, extorted by Susan Berman because of information that she had about Kathy Durst's disappearance and her cooperation manufacturing an alibi, and that Mr. Durst was giving her money. You agree that that was covered in the Jinx, correct?
I didn't see what episode that was. I've never seen, and I've spoke to Andrew Jarecki 2 years prior to that, and he never said anything about extortion.
So, ma'am, so how was it that you mentioned the word extortion to Nick Jaber?
I never mentioned the word extorting.
Okay. All right, let me move on to my next area, ma'am. Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that you knew, and that the defense knew, and that Bob Durst knew, that, quote, you've been talking to that guy, John Lewin, unquote? Did you ever say that to Nick Chavin?
No.
Ma'am, that's a long pause
Yeah,
answering
because
that question.
no, I'm trying to exactly get it right, that's why.
Is that a no absolutely, or is that a I don't recall no?
Never spoke to Nick, didn't know that Nick spoke to you.
That's,
So I never,
okay. How'd you find out about Susan Berman's murder?
it was the time, I think, her murder, I really don't remember. It was probably around the time of Morris Black. I didn't read it in the paper, and it was sometime after her death.
Ma'am, were you aware that Mr. Durst had always, until December 22nd, 2019, denied that he was ever in Los Angeles at the time of the murder? Were you aware of that?
Yes,
And ma'am, you are now aware that Mr. Durst has said not only was he in Los Angeles at the time of the murder, that the defense in this case is he found the body. Are you aware of that?
yes,
Did Mr. Durst ever mention that to you?
no.
So when you heard that all of a sudden, after always denying for 20 years that he was in Los Angeles, when you heard that he was now saying, hey, I found the body, did you ask him about it?
No,
Did that seem strange to you, ma'am, that all of a sudden it was a completely different version of events that he'd been telling you for 20 years?
no,
Ma'am, you are aware that Nick Chavin and Bob Durst had a dinner in Manhattan in 2014, correct? You're aware that that dinner took place?
yes,
And you're aware, and listen to my question very carefully, yes or no, you're aware that that dinner took place because Bob Durst has told you that dinner took place, correct?
Nick called me from that place.
That's,
So
motion to
no, he
strike is,
didn't.
motion to strike is non-responsive.
Stricken?
Ma'am, listen to my question. Has Bob Durst ever confirmed to you that that dinner took place?
Yes.
Okay. When did you become aware, ma'am, when, that Bob Durst had confessed, according to Nick Chavin, at that dinner? or after that dinner? When did you become aware of that?
Whenever he was in court.
Have you ever asked Bob about it?
No,
Why not?
because I didn't ask him. It was from Nick.
Ma'am,
Your Honor, could you
Yes.
ask the witness to answer the question?
she answered the question.
Well, I couldn't actually hear the last few things she said. You were mumbling a little bit. Did
No,
you-
I didn't ask him.
Thank you. Ma'am, did Bob Durst bring up the idea to you of providing him with a false alibi for the week that Susan Berman was murdered?
No, no.
Ma'am?
I said it was a misunderstanding because I didn't speak to Bob then, and I specifically said that he should know, it's hard to know, I didn't know where I was, I said to him on Hanukkah, so I don't know if you would know where you were on Christmas Eve, but we didn't speak to each other until 3 years later, so he didn't ask. It was
Ma'am, listen to my question. I did not ask you when this happened. Listen to my question. Did Bob Durst ever bring up to you the idea of providing a false alibi for that time by asking you to say that he was with you and your family during Christmas of 2000?
No,
Ma'am, didn't you originally volunteer this information during a recorded interview with Jarecki and Smerling on March 15th, 2015?
out of context, if I could explain, I said,
Ma'am, that's a yes or no
no,
question.
Your Honor,
No.
could the witness be allowed to answer?
no,
Okay, ma'am, did you say to Jarecki and or Smerling that Bob had called you from Galveston, told you that he was not with anybody, but that he, quote, has to be with someone, unquote, because he was not where everyone thought he was the night of Susan's murder? Did you say that to Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smerling?
I don't recall that.
But ma'am, when you say you don't recall it, I want to be clear. Is your point going to be that I said it, but that I misunderstood, or that that's not what I meant, or are you actually disputing that you said it?
You're saying he said, I really don't recall. I don't recall that conversation.
Did you tell Mark and Andrew that Bob said to you, I have to still be with someone because it will make it go away, at page 31, line 7 of the interview? Did you say that?
I mean, Bob didn't say that to me. I might have said it, but Bob never said it to me.
So what you're saying is, yes, I said it to Mark and Andrew, but when I said that Bob said it, that was mistaken. So you're saying I said it, but it was incorrect.
Yes.
Okay, and let me go back, ma'am, and I assume that you also would agree that you told Mark and or Andrew Jarecki that Bob had told you that he was not with anybody, but, quote, has to be with someone during the time of Susan's murder. You agree that's what you said to Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smerling, correct?
I might have, yes. I don't-
Well, ma'am, when you say you might have,
but I never spoke to Bob about
Okay.
that, so
ma'am, I'm not asking what Bob told you now, I'm asking what you said. Did you also tell Mark and Andrew during that same interview that Bob asked you where you were that night and what you were doing during the holidays?
no.
Did you also tell Mark and Andrew that Bob told you, that you told Bob in response that you were at a large family gathering on Christmas Eve in New York, but that he had nothing to worry about if he wasn't at the scene of Berman's murder? Did you say that to Mark and Andrew?
No. Oh, wait, I might have said it out of conversation, but that didn't have a conversation with Bob included in it. No, I might have said to him, yes, because, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Did you tell Mark and Andrew during that 3:15:15 interview that you responded to Bob, that you told Bob, quote, to just be with Debbie, since it was only a month after they got married? That's at page 31, line 19. Did you say that?
Probably said you should have been with Debbie, so how could you not be? And
Ma'am.
it's not the holiday, so.
Did you say that?
I don't recall. I don't recall.
Did you further say, ma'am,
What's the date of that one? Mr.
March, this is all from the March 15, 2015 interview.
6 years ago.
Yes, that would be 6 years ago, Mr. Chestnut. You told them, correct, that Bob told you, start that. You told that, that Bob said to you in response to your comment of just be with Debbie, that Bob said that although it was only a month after they got married, that Debbie, his wife, had already told someone that she didn't think Bob was with her that night. Did you say that to Jarecki and Smurley during that interview?
I don't remember.
Did you tell Jarecki and Smurley that Bob told you that for that reason, he could not say that he had been with Debbie when Susan was murdered? Did you say that?
I really don't remember. I don't remember. It was a conversation. It wasn't an interview, so I don't really remember.
You were asked about this issue again during your April 18, 2015 interview. Is that correct? You ever been asked about that, ma'am?
I don't, what was April? Where was I in April? Where I was,
Having a conversation with myself and investigators at your lawyer's office in New York. Do you
Okay.
recall that, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall that this issue came up during that interview?
Yes.
I'm going to play SG052.
And Your Honor, may we mark that as 224 and 224A?
224A.
To remember telling investigators that you thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone on Christmas. If he didn't kill Susan, there wouldn't be any reason for him to say that. Do you remember telling investigators that?
Yeah.
Does that refresh your memory, ma'am, about Bob Durst telling you that he needed you, he wanted you to provide him with an alibi?
No, he was never involved in this whole thing at all. I said it, my opinion. He and I have never had this conversation. It would have been on a recording in jail. Never, ever mentioned Susan Berman.
So, ma'am, I want to go through this. The question is, do you remember telling investigators that you thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone? You responded, yeah, correct?
Yes.
That question asks you, do you agree, ma'am? It asks you why it was that you think it was odd that Bob had made this request of you, correct? That's what the question says.
Right, but he didn't make any, Bob never asked me. I don't understand.
Then
This
why
is
did you say
my
yeah?
opinion.
Why did you say yeah?
Because you said if he didn't kill her, there would be no reason. You're right. There would be no reason for him to worry about where he was.
Ma'am, that's the second part of the question. I want you to look at the first part of the question. Do you remember telling investigators that you had thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone, meaning that you had previously made the statement and you said yeah?
Yeah, no, but I didn't speak to Bob about it. This was my opinion, and it could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Bob, it was anybody. I didn't speak to him at all about Susan Berman. Andrew Jarecki asked me a million times. I didn't speak to him.
SG053, April 18, 2015, page 32, lines 3 through 6.
And Your Honor, can we mark that as 225 and 225A?
Yes.
remember saying to Bob something to the effect of, hey, listen, Bob, I can't say you were with me. I was at Christmas with 30 people. They're going to know you weren't there.
Right.
Does that refresh your memory, ma'am?
Yes, I exactly said, actually, to Detective Becerra, I think it was. But it wasn't, like Bob said to me once, everybody needs to know where everybody is. Something like that. But he never once requested it. I just said, if you were with me, you would remember. I have a very large family, and I know where I am every Christmas Eve. But he never once would ask me for an alibi. We never spoke of an alibi. We never spoke about Susan Berman, ever.
So ma'am, when you were asked the question, do you remember saying to Bob something to the effect of, hey, listen, Bob, I can't say you were with me. I was at Christmas with 30 people. They're going to know you weren't there.
No.
Are you telling me you never said that to Bob?
Never, never.
So, ma'am, is there a reason why you followed up the question with right?
Right, I'm saying, but not, I didn't have the conversation with Bob. I'm saying in general. And I've never, ever had a conversation. He never asked anything like that of me, ever.
Ma'am, so at the time that this issue was coming up,
Yes,
you were aware that Bob Durst's version of events was that he was not in Los Angeles, correct? You were aware that his position was, I was not in Los Angeles. You were aware of that,
yes,
correct?
yes,
You were aware that his position at that time was, I did not write the cadaver note, correct?
yes,
You were aware at that time, ma'am, that his position was, I did not find Susan's body, correct?
yes,
And in fact, ma'am, are you now aware, were you also aware, ma'am, that Bob Durst had repeatedly stated, were you aware, you said you watched the Jinx, that Bob Durst had said that the cadaver note was a letter that only the killer could have written? Were you aware of that?
yes,
Well, ma'am, you're now aware that Bob Durst wrote the cadaver note, correct?
yes,
And you're aware that Bob Durst has said it's a note that only the killer could have written, correct?
yes.
What does that mean?
I can't tell you why he said it. I don't know.
Well, ma'am, would it
I
mean
just-
in general language that that means Bob is saying he's the killer?
Okay.
What? Is that a yes, ma'am?
According to what he said, but I.
Yeah, so according to
can't
Bob's
say.
statement, you're saying, yep, that he's saying he's the killer, but you don't know if that's actually true. Is that what you're saying now?
Oh, that's right, exactly.
Okay. Let me continue, ma'am. When was it that you first found out that Bob Durst had changed his version of events and he was now saying, not only was I in Los Angeles, but I found the body and wrote the note? When did you first find out about that?
Oh my gosh. From Andrew Jarecki, I guess.
Do you know who Emily Altman is? Thank you. I don't know why I'm saying Elaine. Emily Altman is?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation with Bob Durst on July 31st, 2017, in the middle of Emily Altman's conditional examination testimony?
Did I have a conversation?
Yes.
With, I'm sorry. Could you repeat it?
Did you have a conversation with Bob Durst on July 31st, 2017, which was in the middle of Emily Altman's conditional examination testimony?
Maybe, I don't recall the date.
Now, isn't it true that you had a call and that during that call, Bob Durst never told you, never admitted that what Emily Altman had said about him being in Los Angeles was true, correct?
Correct, we didn't speak about it.
And at the time of the call, ma'am, you had been watching Emily Altman's testimony, correct?
No, I didn't see her testimony.
No, meaning, I mean, I'm saying you watched it live, but you had been following her testimony, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
SG 110, 731-17 jail call.
Your Honor, may we mark this as 226 and 226A?
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to tell you.
Sorry, Your Honor, hold on.
Okay, because I was going to tell you. I went online.
Wait, let me stop this. Let me stop it. I think I gave it the wrong. It should have been SG 110. I'm sorry. I think I said the wrong.
I heard
Did I say-
110.
Did I say
Say
110?
110.
Hold on.
You didn't, the audio didn't play on the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I was going to tell you. I went online and the Los Angeles Times for 3 days changed the story because she kept changing her story. You know, I don't, she looked so confused from July 25th, July 26th, and July 27th. She is not consistent. It's just, yeah, no one could even, yeah, that's enough.
I thought you meant I watched her testimony. I didn't watch her testimony. I went online, he asked me if I knew, and I checked it. I didn't
Ma'am?
see her.
Ma'am, I just asked you very clearly.
If I watched,
No, ma'am, and then I said, did you review the testimony? Did you read any articles about the testimony? And your response was you didn't.
no,
That wasn't true, was it?
I didn't actually, I don't even remember reading anything. Somebody probably told me, and I told them I did all this research, and I didn't, but.
So ma'am, when you're saying, you're quoting, I went online in the Los
Yeah.
Angeles Times for 3 days. She kept changing her story. You had a pretty good recollection about her testimony at the time you were having this call, didn't you?
I had someone else that seen it and told me. I didn't.
And at no time during this call, by the way, did Bob Durst say to you, you know what, actually, Emily is right. I was in Los Angeles, I did find the body. He never told you that, did he?
No.
And in fact, ma'am, his defense at the time was the opposite. He was saying, correct, I wasn't in Los Angeles, I didn't write the cadaver note, and I didn't find the body, correct?
Correct.
And that's what he has told you, ma'am, consistently for 20 years, correct?
Told me, yes, outright, yes.
Would it surprise you, ma'am? How do you think that call ended? What do you think the last thing you said to Bob was on that call?
I don't know.
What do you usually say to Bob?
I tell him that I love him. Everything's gonna be okay. Everything will be fine.
I love you, I miss you, is that right?
Yeah.
That's generally how your call.
Everything is gonna be good.
That's generally how your calls end, right?
Yeah.
You and Bob Durst spoke again on October 18, 2017, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember Bob Durst telling you what his theory about the trial was going to be?
I don't.
October 18, 2017, this is going to be SG 111, people's next in order.
Your Honor, may we mark that as 227 and 227A?
Yes.
It seems to me it should lean my way because they got to get 12 people to say, I'm very, very sure that he killed Susan Berman. Right. Yep. All we got to do is get a couple of people who say, well, it's not really very clear. He might have killed Susan Berman. Berman. He might not have killed Susan Berman.
Ma'am,
Yes, yes.
do you recall having that conversation with Mr. Durst?
Well, I'm reading it, I don't actually recall it, but it's there.
And now that you've heard it, ma'am, does that sound like conversations you've had with Mr. Durst?
Yes,
And ma'am, would you agree that during this exchange, Bob Durst isn't telling you, hey, listen, I didn't do this thing. I didn't kill her. Correct? He's not saying that, is he?
no, not outright, no. Those,
Ma'am, when specifically, to the best of your memory, did you find out that Kathy Durst had disappeared? Was that after or before you expressed interest in dating Bob Durst?
after. Well, it was the same time, in an elevator.
And ma'am, when did you find out specifically about Morris Black's death?
The newspaper, I guess.
When did you find out that Bob Durst was admitting that he had dismembered Morris's corpse?
In the newspaper? At the same time everyone else would find out, I guess.
When you heard that Bob Durst had admitted to dismembering Morris's body, what was your response?
Probably the same thing I said on tape with Andrew Jarecki, that nobody knows what they're gonna do when they're in a situation. So,
So your response to hearing that Mr. Durst had dismembered Morris Black was to say, well, I'm not in his shoes. Who knows what you do? That was your response?
yes, that was my response.
You had no problem accepting lots of money from Mr. Durst, at least $400,000, after you found out about the dismemberment of Morris Black, correct?
Correct.
Did you tell Agent Perry on March 18, 2015, that you were not surprised because you had cousins in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, who were mobsters who stuffed people in trunks?
Not my cousins, not my family members, but where I grew up
And you said that
was, I mean, it wasn't something you didn't hear of. It becomes, in that particular neighborhood,
So ma'am, you're telling me that the fact that you had some contact with mobsters who put people in trunks, that that's somehow related to Bob Durst dismembering Morris
I just-
Black after an alleged accidental killing? Is that what your testimony is?
my testimony is, everybody's judged at a clean slate. I could like you and know about you. I'm sorry.
Did you also tell Special Agent Perry that you were going to help Bob write a book about his side of the story?
Yes, I wanted to.
In the end, ma'am, isn't it true that the reason you have not asked Bob Durst questions, specifically about what happened with Kathy, what happened with Susan, what happened with Morris, is because you don't want to know?
No. He says, no.
You discussed issues of love being blind and the differences between acceptance and loyalty during your March 14th interview, 2014 interview with Jarecki and Smurley. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you remember specifically what you told him?
No. I probably said the same thing, that no one knows what they're gonna do in a situation.
Did you say, ma'am, as follows? I do think a lot of times love is blind. It is what it is. You know, I look at stories and you read the news and you read about these parents who stand by their kids, whether it's husbands or wives that stand by them, and you can't figure out why. You can't. You know, I do a lot of things. I told you. I didn't ask Bob questions. Probably most of them was why. And his answer is, well, because that's the way it is. It happened that way. But yeah, I guess, I mean, you see someone, and I don't know, Maybe it's not blind. Maybe it's an acceptance and it's loyalty, or I don't know if I'm getting them confused. If loyalty is being blind, but it could be, I guess, both. I'm partial when you know someone already. Those are your words, correct?
Correct.
And you're basically saying, ma'am, that love is blind, and that in essence you love Bob, and so you didn't ask. Correct?
I said it was an acceptance after I found out Jarecki took my hand. I told Andrew that either I had to accept what he did with Morris Black, or you don't accept it, and that was it. It happened, it's over, and obviously wasn't the thing to do.
Would you agree that your relationship with Bob has been very financially profitable for you?
After 20 years, I don't. It's not what it was based on.
Okay.
Okay, it's 20 years ago.
Have you previously said that Bob Durst is not a violent person and doesn't have a mean bone in his body?
Yes, I said that.
Did you say during your March 10, 2014 interview with Jarecki and Smerling, well, looks like your friend is in trouble, this is the question, and this is what he did. And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, I don't really think it could possibly happen. I didn't think it was, because he doesn't have a mean bone in his body. So as people, I've never seen it ever. Did you say that?
Yes, I did.
Is that your position today as you sit here, that he doesn't have a mean bone in his body and that he's not violent?
Yes.
Have you seen any of the statements that Bob Durst made in the Jinx about how he would physically and emotionally abuse his wife, Kathy?
There was, I know from reading a book that he pulled her by the hair. That's really...
So, ma'am, you're saying that you only know of one isolated instance of domestic violence involving your best friend and person you want to share a love nest with?
I said no, you see, just keep going. It's what somebody sees. Like, I don't know, there's people who have been married and they were terrible people, and then they remarry someone and they're not terrible people. It's how he treated me. How he treated me is what I see. I can't say what he did 40 years ago.
Right, you never lived with him, correct?
Correct.
You've never lived with Bob, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever had there's no sexual relationship, correct?
Correct.
So your relationship consists of you and Bob talking, correct? And Bob sending you lots of money. Is that right?
Somewhere else, we go to dinner, we spend time together. So it's not just like, hi, my name is, send me money.
I want to talk about your contacts with Bob's attorneys.
Okay.
Have you had repeated contacts with Mr. Durst's attorneys?
Not since 5 years ago, I guess. I don't.
Really?
I mean, whenever I was called as a witness,
You've had no contact with any of his attorneys since then? Since 2017 when you were called as a witness?
Correct.
Are you sure?
I mean, I would write, they don't write you back. I just wanted to make sure he's okay, but, no one really gets back to me.
Did you say during a March 4th, 2019 jail call that you mentioned sending, quote, screens to Kat? Who's Kat?
It was their attorney. I wanted to send something that Nick sent me, so.
One of Bob's attorneys, correct?
Correct.
So, ma'am, when I just asked you if you had any contacts with his attorneys, and you told me you haven't had any contacts for 5 years.
I thought you meant they contacted me. I kind of reached out. I just said that. I would also see how Bob was doing, and nobody would get back to me, but I said things that I thought were important. Nick harassing me was important.
Ma'am, did Bob discuss with you the issue of you not providing any damaging information to the authorities? Has he ever done that?
No.
Has he ever specifically mentioned that my office likely would be in touch with you, and that his lawyer, Steve, has told you 27 times that you don't tell them shit? Has he ever said that to you?
No. Who's
Did-
Steve?
Did he clarify that your kids wouldn't talk to the authorities either?
No.
SG 092 520
Who's Steve?
2015 jail call.
Your Honor, may we mark this as 228 and 228A?
Yes.
Also, I was just speaking to my friend Gene Clark, who lives someplace near LA, and seemingly the DA is going through the list of everybody I've been calling from jail to contact them. You should expect to get a call, because you've already gotten a call, from the DA wanting to talk to you about, what you said to me and stuff. I'm sure Steve has told you 27 times that you don't tell the shit.
Right, I know.
Good at that. I imagine your kids are good at it too. All righty, hey, listen, I'm gonna get all.
We don't answer phones unless it's you. We don't answer the phone. Listen, did you get mail today?
Ma'am,
Yes.
that was Bob Durst telling you to make sure that Steve, his lawyer, that you've been told that you're not to tell me and investigators shit, correct?
I guess. I don't really remember, but it's there.
Ma'am, and your response was, I know. What did you mean by I know?
I know, don't talk to anybody. I don't know. I had to get a lawyer. That was,
Let me say it again, ma'am. What did you mean when Bob Durst is telling you that you're not to tell them shit? That that's the message through Steve? And are you saying you don't know Steve Rabinowitz to be one of Bob
okay.
Durst's lawyers?
Okay, I remember him. I just couldn't think of Steve.
Does that now ring a bell?
I remember Steve. I didn't speak to him much, but yes.
You did talk to him, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Did you talk to him 27 times?
No.
You talked to him a lot though, correct?
I don't think so.
Well, do you know why Bob Durst was telling you that you've obviously spoken to Steve 27 times and that you know not to tell them shit? Do you know why he would say that?
Objection,
I
Your Honor.
don't. I don't have
Objection.
anything.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. 352, argument, calls for an opinion. It also does not, I don't want to make a speaking objection.
Okay. Let's discuss it over without the jurors. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you go on your break till 1:30. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case.
Yes. I don't know, not so far.
All right, jurors have departed. I have a note from Juror 12 that during the sidebar break, Ms. Giordano tried to engage the jury. So, someone
Mr.
needs
what,
to
Your Honor?
converse with the jury. She tried to converse.
Ms. Giordano.
Ms. Giordano, the witness. So, she's your witness, so you can tell her not to.
Will do.
Okay, now, the objection, so we explain your objection, please? Oh, the question was that, that Mr. Durst told her not to tell them shit. The question, that's the preface, and the question is, do you know why he would say that? And explain your objection.
using Mr. Durst's words, to have her draw a conclusion as to why he would say something which is in complete conflict with what she did, because she spoke to every policeman that ever asked her a question, Your Honor. She spoke to the New York police, she spoke to the FBI, she spoke to LAPD, she spoke to Mr. Lewin. So basically, they're trying to impugn Mr. Durst through her testimony. If and when Mr. Durst testified, Mr. Lewin will be free to ask Mr. Durst why he said that. But to ask her why Bob said that to her, it doesn't really follow, Your Honor. It's not relevant why she thinks Bob said that. She talked. Why is it relevant why Bob said that?
Court want to respond?
And that, well, wait just a second. He also mischaracterized what Mr. Durst said. And Mr. Durst didn't tell her, don't talk to him. He said, I'm sure Steve has told you 27 times, probably, that you don't tell them shit.
Yes, Mr. Lewin?
Okay, does court
Go
want a
ahead.
response?
No, the tentative would be to overrule the objection.
Then-
Go ahead.
No, and I don't, if the
I
court
mean, I
doesn't
think
hear
that
from
to
me, I don't
me,
need.
I don't want to, I think better you explain it than I.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Sure, Your Honor. So, what's going on is she's basically saying, and she's repeated, that they don't have these conversations. That's number one. Here's Bob Durst literally telling her that he is sure that his lawyer has told her 27 times not to say shit. I don't know how Mr. DeGuerin can, even with a straight face, make the statement that he just said, that, well, Bob's just repeating what his lawyer said. It is very clear Bob Durst is attempting to interfere with a witness, and she is acknowledging, saying, I know. Then he even asked, are the kids good with it? And she says, oh yes, we don't even answer the phone, etc. So this goes to two relevant areas. Number one, it goes to demonstrate that this witness is deliberately hiding and making clear and making sure that she does not say anything that is inculpatory of Mr. Durst. That is consistent with her testimony, where I've had to impeach
And
her.
that's relevant because Mr. Durst did these things and she knows it.
Yes, correct.
And he's instructed her because he knows it also. It's his consciousness of guilt.
It's his conscious guilt, absolutely, and it's her agreement that in essence she is going to interfere by not providing the information that she has, and that she is going to make sure that she does what she can do and that her kids do what she can do to subvert the judicial process.
So it seems. Go ahead, Mr. Chesnut.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that she's going to subvert the process, Your Honor, they had to hit her once to get her to talk and twice to shut her up. She spoke to them multiple times, answered every question, did not evade a question, and they have now established to the jury through the playing of it that that's the conversation. Her opining on what Bob means is just cumulative at this point, Your Honor.
Well,
and it's not an expression. The words are perhaps consciousness of guilt, but asking her to interpret the words, I don't understand where that is relevant to the jury's determination of Bob's consciousness of guilt.
Let me have one last thing to help.
It's partially about her, but it's more about Bob.
Yeah,
But
let me
go
ask
ahead, yes.
one last thing.
Yeah.
The problem is that the first thing I asked her was, what did you mean by I know? She would not give an answer that makes any sense. So now what you have to do is she has adopted Bob's statement. So when Bob says to her this information, she says, I know. So now I'm saying, okay, you don't know what you meant by I know. What did you take Bob Durst's statement to mean when he said it to you? Completely relevant for the two reasons the court said. This
Okay.
is relevant, probative, important information.
Don't tax our reporter. with
Oh, I'm
you.
sorry, Your Honor.
You get so
I
excited.
get fired up.
Mr. Chesnut?
Your Honor, when she says, I know, it may be that she knows that Steve has told her 27 times, don't tell them.
That's another inference that can be drawn, but I think that
And
Mr. Lewin's inference is certainly a reasonable inference, and just as there's a different explanation, it's ambiguous. But I'm not going to adopt one meaning or the other. I'll let the evidence come out, and you can argue what it means. But I do believe it is relevant. I do not believe it's cumulative. I do believe it is probative. She's involved in escaping. She's involved in communication with other witnesses. Not only is she not cooperating, she's talking to another witness, which shows another consciousness of guilt as far as her relationship with and communications with Chavin. So it's this is clearly at Mr. Durst's behest. So it's not about her consciousness. Ultimately, it's about his consciousness. So that's why it's relevant.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, recess.